This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, we are live in the breakout room, and this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development. And we have a very special guest on this live version of the breakout room. Her name is Elizabeth Mikotowicz, and she is an entrepreneur of sorts, and her story is intriguingly fascinating. One that would bring a whole lot of highlights about the prison system in the US of A, and of course her challenges with fighting off drug abuse and living a life that almost basically destroyed her future. But she recovered, and that's a fantastic thing. And so we say hats off to Elizabeth for what she has done with her life and so on. But I'm not the star of the moment. She's the one that's in the spotlight. So, Elizabeth, welcome to the show, this episode. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to come on. So, you were supposed to be on about 2 weeks ago, but you had some challenges with your dog, Spavo.
Yeah, we just moved down south. My fiance got a job down here, and we got some puppies, and they ended up catching parvo, and it was awful. Even with the vaccine, they only have like a 41% chance of making it. So, and it's really bad now. I had never even heard of it, until they were sick. And, a lot of these vets just care more about profit than they do animals. So, I mean, it was really awful. And we lost 3 of them from it. And yeah, it was rough.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know most folks have a very good emotional relationship with their pets, and they mean something. So I
Yeah.
understand and empathize with you. And we hope that you have great success with the dogs that you have remaining going forward as well. Yeah?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome.
They're too old to catch parvo. So
I hear you. Okay. So they are safe. They are shielded, insulated so far.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Elizabeth, we just want to get into your story a little bit. So we know that you were in a very violent, abusive relationship, and that almost cost you your life. But
Yeah.
tell us about the period of time before that. What was it like for you growing up as a young lady, as a teen?
I struggled with mental health a little bit, and the doctors just put me on, an antidepressant, and turns out I'm high functioning autistic. So, I've gone through bipolar diagnosis, ADHD, all of that.
Yeah.
And, none of their meds ever worked for me. Like a lot of their psych meds would put me in psychosis. And so I struggled with that growing up. But, I had a really great family. There was a lot of love, a lot of support. And, I was really blessed in that, area.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. So what happened with regards to that relationship where you almost lost your life? How was that experience for you?
Well, it was pretty awful. My ex hit me with a wooden dowel, and you could see my skull when that happened. And when I went to the hospital, I found out I was pregnant. And so I started getting seizures after that assault. And so my daughter was only 14 months old, and I would be unconscious for, moments at a time on the ground, and I'd go deaf and blind. And so she had to start staying with my father because, I kept waking up. I'm like, I don't want to wake up to a tragedy. And there was nothing I could do about it. I was going to manipulation therapy every 2 weeks. They put me in the pain clinic. And when I tried to refuse, because I'm like, I'm pregnant, I don't want to get addicted, my baby get addicted, they told me not to worry because I was on too small of a dose, which, now we know that was just Big Pharma's gimmick.
Yeah.
That, to push their product. And they told me that because I was pregnant, it could result into a call to CPS, because where my blood pressure kept skyrocketing, it can put the baby in danger. And even though, opioids, all they do is make the pain receptors in your brain more sensitive. So when it wears off, you're in twice the amount of pain than you were. And that's the evil of this drug, and what they're not telling people. It literally rewires your brain to make that substance like water. And, so the abuse got worse. He would trap me in the bathroom and torture me for hours. I mean, he choked me to the point my windpipe was damaged, and I would go through these fits where it would kind of collapse in on itself and I couldn't breathe, and I would have to chug water to like open up my airway enough. And this would go on for about 45 minutes, like to the point where I'd be throwing up because I drank so much water. And I eventually went to Spruce Run, the battered women's shelter in Bangor. And first they called me a liar. They said, well, women come in here and they're crying and upset. You have no emotion. So I brought my hospital records. I brought, the police report, all that stuff. And then they did a complete 180 and they said, well, after talking with the cops, your injuries are so extensive and your situation is so dangerous that it puts the other women in the shelter in danger. So sorry, we can't help you. And I had made a deal with my father that if they wouldn't help me and get me into housing, because I lost my housing because of this man. And the one of the girls that got the bed, she lived in the same housing unit as me, and at a party she was laughing. She goes, he didn't even hit me, he just kicked my car, and now I'm getting a whole new apartment. Like, she lost her place because she was partying. Like, I lost it because of something I had no control over.
Okay.
And and absolutely that's domestic violence, breaking property and, intimidation. But in compared to my situation where I literally would have died if I hadn't gone to the hospital, and I was still struggling with, permanent damage. Like, I was in so much pain every day now. Like, I had never dealt with chronic pain before, and this was completely debilitating. And, like, of course, after I had my son, like, I wasn't really trying to, stay in control of, my addiction. Like, I kind of just, went out the window with it and was like, well, I don't have a baby to worry about anymore. It's just me. And so that's when I started kind of like getting worse. And once Spruce Run didn't help me, drug dealers did, basically. Like, they gave me places to hide, they gave me drugs to sell. And, I ended up, becoming something I never planned on. Like, I was a single mom going to college. Like, I had plans and dreams and stuff I wanted to do. And, because of some bad choices of who I dated, my whole life fell apart. And 70% of women in American prison have some sort of sexual assault or domestic violence in their past. These are women who were, fallen through the cracks of society and were failed. And, then I went to jail in 2011 and I got to see the systemic cruelty of it. I grew up thinking that America was such a great country and everybody was so equal. And, there was a civil rights movement, but, it's all better now. And, nobody gets, racially oppressed anymore, except for a couple isolated incidences. And that was, I going to prison and seeing firsthand, like, what was really happening. It was like, I felt so betrayed. I'm like, they were sterilizing women of color in American prisons. Like, I met a couple of them, and at some point I'm like, not a single one of these women are white. And now all of a sudden it's a great day, for white lives, with the overturning of Roe v. Wade. It's like, they're still committing genocide. They're still, targeting certain groups. And, it was just horribly, awakening in such a awful way. And the stuff women go through in prison. My first week at Somerset County, an entire pod of women got stripped out because they signed up for a razor, and the male sergeant wanted a list of who shaved their vaginas and who didn't, because they made a rule that said you couldn't shave yourself down there. And this was only for the women. They weren't stripping men out to see if they'd shaved down there. And those that did were punished. And this is the PG stuff that goes on, in American prisons. And we have more prisons than we do colleges. I mean, at this point, it's really bad. The doctors in the prison, doctors are allowed to have lost their license. Most of them have malpractice suits and have lost their doctor's license, but they're allowed to treat people in prison. And this is why so many inmates die of neglect. I mean, I've watched inmates perform minor surgeries on themselves because they can't get adequate health care.
Wow. Elizabeth, I can hear the passion in your story, and I understand the pain of that reality. You probably having to kind of relive it by pieces in your mind again. But what I want to focus on is, when did you come to the point where you realized that you had to do something, even in that system, even among all the negative stuff that was happening, to make your life personally better? And when you came out of there, you had something valuable. When did that affinity moment created a turnaround for you? What was that experience? What happened?
Well, so there was this officer at Somerset County, and I was put in solitary all kinds of times, for petty reasons because they didn't like me. And she'd literally come in. I was on a medication that was putting me in psychosis because they had me on antidepressants, and those just don't work for me. And she would come in and tell me to kill myself, or write on my paperwork, I can't wait for you to get out, so you overdose, and really awful stuff like that. It was in the paper
Wow.
that it was in the paper that she told another inmate to kill themselves, and they had to cut that inmate down from a suicide attempt. He tried to hang himself. And
Wow.
so I had let all this go and moved on with my life, and was doing art shows and other things in the community, in my sobriety. And that came out in the paper, and how the jail was refusing to hand over the officer's disciplinary records. And then that's when I was like, you know what? They knew she was doing this to people, because I told them. And I gave them these, the things that she would write to me and stuff like that. And I had also filed a PREA complaint against them because they forced me to strip in front of cameras under duress of being maced and extracted. And that's when they come in 12 deep with a SWAT team, all suited up in, electric shock shields, mace, batons. They have canisters full of chemicals that are chemically designed to take the oxygen out of your throat. I mean, and if one cell gets hit, they all get hit because of the vent systems. So even the inmates that haven't done anything wrong, they are being met with this violence. And so when I got to Alderson, I filed a PREA complaint, which stands for Prison Rape Elimination Act. And they admitted to everything I was complaining about, and then they deemed it unfounded. That's how they stop it from going outside of the jail to an outside source. This is why these institutions can't continue to do their own investigations, because they'll just say, oh, unfounded, whatever. Yeah, it's fine. We did it, but it's okay because, we're the law and we can do that. And so Alderson wouldn't even let me hold this complaint. They read me the results, and then they wouldn't even let me hold it to read it myself. They wouldn't let me have a copy of it. I couldn't send it home. I couldn't do anything. And this is how they're bearing the abuse. They're just not giving the paperwork. And so when they did this to me, when it was in the paper again, that's when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna, see if I can get the paperwork and see what I can do, to bring awareness about this. So I'm actually proposing a bill that states all jail facilities be, fined like $500 a day or something for every day they stonewall an inmate. There needs to be a consequence, because right now, by law, they have to give me the paperwork if I request it, but there's no consequence for them if they don't. So there needs to be a consequence. This is how they're, bearing the abuse. And then when I got out of prison, the captain and 4 of his subordinates at Alderson, Captain Grimes, all got arrested and charged and convicted of raping and stalking inmates and tampering with PREA evidence. So I'm not the only one they did it to, and I was far from their worst victim. And, just it's terrible. And the juvenile systems here, and, you have these Republicans going, well, we need armed cops in every school to prevent mass shootings. Well, you did that, and you didn't prevent a single mass shooting, but you did send a bunch of Black kids to jail. To juvenile centers. And this is where they're, predators flock to these facilities for work. 98% of predators aren't on the registry. They, 96% of them don't even see a courtroom.
Okay.
So, you have these juveniles getting abused so horribly. When I was at Cumberland, they would bring these juvenile kids with us when they got to be too much of a problem. This one little girl assaulted the officer with, a pencil. And so they sent her with us. She got tired of getting sexually assaulted. So she retaliated. they sent her with us. They told her she was going back on Christmas. They ruined this little girl's Christmas, re-traumatized her, and told her she was going back into the custody of her abusers. She, that night, broke a razor open, and that was it. She lived, thank God. But this is what they're doing to women and children in the system, and they're calling it rehabilitation when actually it's all for profit. Yep. A hospital saves $350,000 a year contracting their linen to be washed by inmates instead of paying regular Americans a minimum wage, not even a living wage, a minimum wage. I think it was Indiana that said their economy would collapse if they didn't have cheap inmate labor. There's a reason that all of these prisons across America were taking out PPP loans during the pandemic. They were expanding their prisons. They were putting more beds in their facilities. And now they're criminalizing homelessness. We have 29 empty properties for every homeless man, woman, and child in America. It was 3 before the pandemic. I mean, I'm not one for, socialism and all that, but, China's doing something right. They don't have a single homeless person.
Wow. I understand what you're saying. And I guess the passion continues. Now, I just want you to look on the brighter side of things for a little bit. All that is reality, and somebody's got to deal with it. I commend you for the stand that you take and for being able to stand up for what you believe. A whole lot of people need to do that because they have to understand that everybody's opinion matters and everybody's opinion counts. Here's the thing. Tell us a bit about EPM clothing and how that came into reality.
So I created... I found this company called Le Galeries, and they transform your art into a clothing line, a very feminine clothing line. I painted murals in prison, and I would paint inmates' cups, as a side hustle, and I do portraits and, small stuff like that. And over the pandemic, I found this company, Le Galeries. They're in Montreal, Canada. And it's environmentally friendly. It comes in plus sizes, so it's very inclusive. And it's not, as women, we're, taught that we're only as valuable as we are skinny and pretty. And I was so happy with this brand, when I ordered it. And, I'm skinny now, but there was a time, growing up, I was a little bit thicker. So when trying clothes on, certain brands would size their stuff really, really small. And it would be like 3 sizes smaller than, other brands. And it would, I'd watch, I'd feel bad about myself, and I'd watch a lot of my friends, skip eating afterwards. And so there's this really toxic culture that women have had shoved down their throats. And I'm just so happy that, this brand, everything's sized bigger. So it's not going to make anyone feel bad. And, the colors are just dead on to my paintings. Like, I'll paint the designs and send it to them and pick out what I want on it. And then, you end up getting all this really pretty stuff,
right?
And some days I'm like super gothic and, kind of, in that dark femme energy. And then other days it's like flowers and butterflies and koi fish and, stuff like that. And you can get the same, the painting is on the tag.
Yeah.
So you can get like a whole outfit of like one matching painting, and you can get a bag, you can get headbands, you can get pants, dresses, shirts. I mean, there's even pillowcases.
Yeah.
Like, this is a pillowcase.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's placemats. Here's a placemat.
Okay.
And everything, like the way it's made, it's all environmentally friendly. So, we're not hurting the earth with this. And that's something I think everyone needs to start thinking about.
That's right. The environment is very, very important.
Yes.
The systems is very important to our survival. Yeah. Pretty stuff. So, Elizabeth, here's the thing. I get the feeling, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, that much of what you had experienced and gone through comes alive through your murals, your designs, and even what you have on the clothing.
Yeah.
And so what is the real message that you want people to get, especially maybe women, minorities who facing the same kind of stuff that you went through, and
Yeah.
it's a challenging thing and they need to overcome. What are you saying to them through your murals, the artwork, and the clothing? I know there's a strong message there. What is it like for you?
Um, well, my mission with this brand is to, empower, all who embody the divine feminine, whether you're a woman, trans, man, woman, whatever. Like, I want, the world teaches us that we're to be thrown away and that there's something wrong with us. And if we speak up too loud, it's a problem. And, I just want to empower anybody that embodies that divine feminine energy, that you're worth it and you're beautiful and you have something to offer the world, and believe in yourself and know how stunning you really are.
Okay. All right. I hear that and I appreciate that. So are you still in the process of putting together your memoir?
Yes, I am editing it. I just got another chapter edited the other day, so it's coming along. It's called No Justice, Just Us. And one of the very first cells I was in, somebody wrote on the wall, "There's no justice in the system. It's just us in the system." And it's come to be a true statement. And just to add on what, I was saying before about the prison industries bypassing slavery laws, for profit. They only pay us $5.25 a month to work 40 hours a week. And if we don't, we lose good time, we're punished, we're put in the hole. It's just, and then they, like when we order commissary, like a package of ramen noodles will cost 20 cents out here. It costs $1.50 in there. They're extorting us for money every which way they can. And, wow. It's all on the taxpayers' money. When you show up to prison, if you don't have your GED or high school diploma, they'll make you take the GED. And that's good if you don't have the GED. But what was happening is the prison's getting $2,000 for every inmate that takes the GED and another $2,000 when they graduate. While they would tell the inmates, you have to get your high school transcripts. We're not going to get them for you. And you only have 60 days to do this, or you're going to be put in the GED. Even though it was in their PSI and their paperwork that they had PhDs and doctorates. So there were all these women with, these very high educations that were being forced to take the GED because it's making the prison money. And then to cut corners again, they'd have those inmates with the high educations teach the inmates that actually needed the GED instead of hiring teachers. So, it's just one big money pit, and, it's not right. We make up 25% of the global incarceration population. And this is mostly targeting, BIPOC communities and poor. The rich can pay their way out of it.
Yeah.
And me, even as a white woman, I got 37 months, which I was very blessed to get. But if I had been a Black woman or a Spanish woman or a Native woman, I probably would have gotten 5, 7 or more years.
Oh,
that's not right. And, I went to prison and I got to read all the paperwork. So I got to compare all this. And, I'm not going to just be like the former generations of white women that's going to uphold this system of white supremacy, because it's not helping any of us. I don't want to be the trustee of the block. I'm good. Like, y'all can keep that.
Wow. Elizabeth, I like your energy. I sometimes think that we need to have a better understanding of the systems that we live in the world. And not only just the system, but what is behind the system, what drives it, what keeps it going, and the effects that it has on the whole that it has on people, especially in the minorities. And I understand what you're saying. So you were able to work with state representatives to pass bills. How did you come about? What was that experience like?
So there was this cop up in Calais, and he got drug charges for giving this high school girl drugs to give to her mother, who was paying for these drugs through sex acts. So He was extorting this woman's addiction, a 30-year-old veteran cop, they are well versed in addiction. Yeah. So I was so mad he only got drug charges. So I called the DA up and I was like, why didn't you charge him with a sex crime? he abuses authority, he abuses power, like this isn't okay. And he's like, well, the way the law is written, it was consent. But you should bring these issues up with the main state legislatures, because they can put amendments in and, you know, add to this. Because, you know, cops, it's not the same as correctional officers. Like, they consider it consent with civilians, and it shouldn't be, because they have power over us. You know,
Right.
and as a woman who's been to prison, the only thing I'm thinking is, you know, what am I going to jail for when I say no? And, you know, that's the reality of it. And so I wrote to Charlotte Warren and a few others, and she responded to me and said, you've made some really good points, you know, stuff that I wouldn't have thought of. So that one's still being worked on. But one we did just get passed in Maine was mandating all jails provide tampons and pads free of charge for women. Because this is a problem in prison too. You know, they don't have pads and tampons, you know. Well, they will, most places will only provide, you know, these really cheap pads.
Yeah.
But, you know, if you run out, they're not too quick to go run and get them for you. And, you know, a lot of places will charge you for tampons, and they'll jack the price up way more than, you know, you pay out here. And so women will literally make their own tampons and give themselves infections, and it's a problem. And, you know, I've watched female officers tell women, go bleed on yourself. Like, what do I care? And it's that, you know, too many sociopathic people are in this position over people's lives. And I'm not here to say all cops are bad and, you know, all that, because, you know, for every cop that oppressed or tried to hurt me, there was another risking their job trying to make it stop. And that's a problem in itself too. So I'm not going to sit here and, you know, say it's cops as a whole, but it's a very alarming high number, you know, of the population. And, you know, a lot of those cops that stood up for me, I can't say I know for sure if they would have, if I was a black woman or a brown woman. Like, I can't, because I honestly don't know, because I've seen them treat other inmates horribly for those reasons.
Yeah. Okay, great. So I'm looking at the situation with regards to opioids, and I'm thinking, why is it that it seems to be the one drug that is so attractive with regards to dependence and highly popular, and it happens so fast?
Yeah.
You do it, you're gone. What is the reason for that?
I mean, you know, I think Big Pharma really peddled this stuff, and it before we even knew what happened, you know, this stuff literally rewires your brain. You know, it floods your system with endorphins and makes you feel so good. It makes all your pain go away, all your trauma, all that. And then when you come down, it brings it all back, you know, tenfold.
Yeah. And
so it's that you're not even getting high anymore. You're just trying not to be sick. And you start, and then they want you to take Suboxone. There's actually a plant out there that completely cures opioid disease. You know, you don't detox or addiction. You don't detox, you don't get sick, and you don't want to do it after. Big Pharma had the CDC outlaw it because they want to make money off of the whole country being on Suboxone and methadone. This is all a big money maker. You know, the suffering of the American people is $1 trillion industry, from the rehabs to the insurance companies to, you know, Big Pharma and the prison industry, because then they get to blame us for our addiction and then put us all in prison and put us to work. And, you know, the rehabs, they have a 94% failure rate, and they'll kick people out for petty reasons. They'll have these ridiculous petty rules for people with mental health issues who are coming off of drugs. Mm-hmm. And then they just kick people out, and it's $30,000, no refund.
Wow.
So these rehabs need to have a morality investigation or something, because I mean, they're just taking advantage of a horrible situation, you know, and the medical insurance companies are loving it.
Wow.
I mean, this is a medical issue, not, you know, a criminal issue.
Okay, I get that. So if you were to give somebody advice as to how they can maintain their sobriety and really manage themselves better to get away from all of that?
Yeah.
Some of the things, Elizabeth, that you would be saying to them.
You got to stay away from all your old friends. I stopped hanging out. I love them, care about them, but I'm not going to be around people that are breaking the law and getting high anymore.
Yeah.
And, I meditate a lot. I do a lot of binaural beats. They're free on YouTube. You can look up binaural beats. It's like sound frequency healing, and you can rewire your own brain if you stay at it and, are, dedicated enough. Like, I quit smoking. I would literally tell myself, I hate cigarettes. It's disgusting. I hate them. I quit smoking. I would literally tell myself this every day as I went to sleep and as I smoked a cigarette. And eventually I found it disgusting. Yeah. And I just quit doing it.
Okay.
And yeah.
Okay, I get that. Thanks for sharing, Elizabeth. Now, in terms of the future, what does Elizabeth Mikotowicz have for herself plan going forward? What are some of the things that you want to achieve? Are you looking to, say, expand the enterprise of your clothing line and stuff?
Yep, I just took a couple workshops on how to get your brand into like big chain stores. So yeah, like I've gotten them in a couple small boutiques in rural areas, but I want to get my brand in, something big. So,
yeah, is it challenging to do that?
You just have to know what you're doing and do it the proper way. I'm also planning on getting my memoir published. I just have to finish editing it. It's coming along though. And I have an adult coloring book that I'm drawing, and I'm putting a whole bunch of tips in for trauma and addiction, people in recovery basically, and what I've learned about trauma and PTSD and stuff.
Yeah, you've had that kind of hands-on personal experience. So tell me, Elizabeth, is there a mentor in your life, that person that's always there when you need someone to talk to? They help you make big decisions and basically helps you keep your feet on the ground and your mind focused.
I signed up with vocational rehab, and therefore, if anybody out there who's like has a story like mine or a background like mine, they have vocational rehab in all 50 states, and they'll give you a business advisor. They showed me how to get apply for a $10,000 grant, and I got it. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never gotten this much money like legally before. Right. And they help you a lot with any kind of employment, or if you want to get back into school and, do all that. And that's another thing, how they take advantage of felons. They'll, friends of mine, he went to school to be to read x-rays. And then after he graduated, he was the top of his class. Nobody would hire him because he was a felon. So they will take felons' money and be like, yeah, we'll put you through school, da, da, da. And then, they'll let them go for these degrees that they have no chance of getting any job in. Wow. Just to get them in debt, just to, break them a little more. And it's just, it's not right. We have a lot of things we need to address in this country. Actually, that was another bill I got passed. You know how I was talking about there's 29 empty properties. Well, these landlords were charging these outrageous application fees and processing fees, and not actually renting the apartment. They'd get, 10 people in a week, charge like $100 per person sometimes in the family just to apply. And then they'd go through, not even go through it. They'd have 78 people that have viewed the apartment. And that's one way to tell. If you go on these, realty sites, and they have like 78 people that have looked at the apartment, like you couldn't find one tenant in 78 people. Like, no, you're scamming people. It's free money to you. And so they passed a bill, the Tenant Bill of Rights, saying that you can only charge an application fee if a lease is signed.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's fair. Like.
Yeah. That's good. So we hope that the stuff that you're working on with regards to the bill, that they actually get into fruition and make a positive impact to some people who have found themselves to be victims of the system. Elizabeth, I just want to share something with you,
Mhm.
and I want you to give me your comments. I found this on TikTok.
What's up, TikTok? So when I was in prison at Danbury, my job was the artist of the prison, and I would paint murals. So I found some of the pictures, and I was going to share them with you guys. These murals are still up at Danbury. So I was only allowed to use the color blue, and obviously black and white for shading, but I call this my blue period. I figure that's quite fitting considering I was in prison. Now, there were tons more murals I did, but I did not get pictures of all of them. And then in between, like where you see the writing, there's like quotes and stuff. And that's my Phoenix. So let me know what y'all think. Oh, and to add context, I got paid $57 a month. And it was one of the highest paying jobs in the prison. Everyone else was working like $5.25 a month, working 40 hours a week. Yeah. Yeah, these big corporations are just loving.
Wow. So, Elizabeth, your comments. Tell us what was happening when you decided to make that video. And are these murals still really at Danbury still?
Yep.
Wow. Why did they keep them up though?
The caseworker wanted to make the place look beautiful and inspiring and not just have white walls. So she had murals like all the way down the hallway and on some of the walls, like in the chapel and by the phones and stuff.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, thanks for sharing. So we're coming down to the end of the program. And I just want to give you the opportunity to kind of reach out to our audience and tell them how they can make contact with you if they need to get your clothing and stuff online, if they want to go shopping, how they can take advantage of that. So just share your information.
I'm on TikTok and Instagram. I am on Twitter, but I never go on there since Elon. Both handles are the same. It's EPM_art_1111. And the Legalaries website is http://www.legalaries.com/en/Elizabeth.Mikotowicz.
All right, great. So here what, when we put this episode out, we're going to put all that information in the description so that people, when they get the episode and they're looking through the description, they can actually click on some of those links and get to you and put in their orders. And if they want to get something, let's say somebody wants to get something original and they give,
yeah, I can do that too.
You can do that as well.
Yep, and I do portraits and canvases for people.
That's
and any stores that want to buy wholesale, I would love to have my brand in your store. So,
of course. So Elizabeth, where did the art come from? How did you develop that as a technique, a skill?
Well, I always was really good in like art classes in school and stuff. And when I was pregnant and, you know, a young mom, I would paint a lot. And then I kind of, you know, lost my way. I didn't really do art at all during those, you know, darker years. But once I went to jail, my dad sent me, you know, drawing books and English writing prompt books. So I would write and I would draw and I would paint when I can. So
yeah,
my mother also, she sent me this book called Zentangle art, and it's like meditative, like doodling, and that's actually the adult coloring book that I'm creating. Yeah, I'm gonna have it as Zentangle art.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you so much. So, folks, we have had the pleasure of listening to some very fascinating, riveting stories from Elizabeth with regards to her time that she spent in prison, how she saw the system, the ills of the system, the injustices of the system. But despite all of that, she was able to reprogram herself. And now she's doing her thing and the manner in which she wants to do it, and sending a very powerful and positive message to people who probably still in the system, and they need to understand how to navigate and how to help themselves get to a higher level and live a better lifestyle. So, Elizabeth, we just want to thank you so much for being on the show. And people, I want you to remember the three watchwords: health, happiness, and prosperity. And Elizabeth has touched all those three areas on this episode. We just want to thank her so much. And we hope that she has continued success going forward with her clothing line. And we look forward for that memoir coming out soon, No Justice, Just Us. I'm personally looking forward for when that comes out so I can give it a thumbs up and my support. So until next time, this is Andy of Andy's Personal Development together with my guest, Elizabeth Mikotowicz, saying so long. Thank you so much. Godspeed. God bless. Shalom. Namaste. Bye for now.